understanding the deepest layers of intersectionality, injustice, and perseverance. Hopeful and compassionate growth, love that we all hope MCI processes, relationships, initiatives, decisions are rooted in. In her and her loving relationship with her daughter, Phyllis, we witness, experience, learn from, and even empower our micro grassroots approach towards intimate and personal connections and relationship-based case management within and between families with understood small-scale, deep-rooted ripples, creating dynamic social change nested in the most systemic and macro global inequities. In her is the real possibility of compassionate growth for all of human community, centered in open, welcoming, equity-based systems in all of her identities for women, racial minorities, sexual violence survivors, underprivileged, and the extremely impoverished, IDP peoples, disability rights, social entrepreneurs, mothers, daughters. My mom and I met Miriam back in the summer of 2009. We first met her as she was working, we thought, actually volunteering, at the Maleka Kids School for Children with Special Needs. Miriam did not speak English, and I did not speak Swahili, but we understood each other. As a thank you to the teachers, I presented each of them with a Free State soccer shirt, as I was an assistant coach at the time. This was the last time I thought I was going to see her. 2 days later, when visiting the new IDP, internally displaced peoples community around Maimayu, Kenya, and bearing witness to vulnerability and poverty that I had never, ever before experienced, I saw a woman with a Free State soccer shirt walk past. Miriam. Miriam invited my mom and me into her tent, and introduced us to her daughter Phyllis. Phyllis was 12 at the time and lying on the dirt floor wet in her own waste. Phyllis has multiple severe disabilities, the most prevalent being cerebral palsy and nonverbal. Miriam told us a story, her story, their story. When Phyllis was born, Miriam had already grown up in intense transgenerational poverty, married a man who was, according to her parents, little by little beating her to death, a loving mother of 5 children, and a social entrepreneur with her own goats and cows. Early on, when it became obvious that Phyllis had severe needs, the domestic violence worsened as her husband, the community, and society blamed Miriam for her daughter's disabilities. In Miriam's great inner strength, she divorced her husband and took the children. Now, as a single mother with intense responsibilities, she was unable to create enough income to generate the basic needs for the children. This hope on a tightrope life circumstance continued for the next 13 years. In the 2007-2008 Kenyan post-election violence, Miriam and her family were violently displaced, along with over 300,000 Kenyans from around the country, from their home in Eldoret. Miriam, to save her children, had the 5 other children leave on a full bus, as Miriam refused to leave Phyllis behind. Over the next 5 months, without knowing if her children had survived or where they were, Miriam and Phyllis were left with thousands of other displaced peoples at a temporary holding ground. Eventually, Miriam and Phyllis resettled with 237 other IDP families. They're really proud of that number. At Vamilia, outside Maimayu. Vamilia means perseverance. For the next 2 years, Miriam and Phyllis lived in a tent in extreme conditions, even in this community of the most vulnerable of the vulnerable. Miriam and Phyllis were marginalized and blamed for the problems of the peoples, accused of using too much water when she washed her, bringing bad luck, all due to her daughter's difference. Miriam and Phyllis did not give up, but instead Miriam became even more determined to let the life she lived and the love she had speak for her. Every day, Miriam would sell her food for soap to wash Phyllis. In 2009, Miriam heard about the CTC, Maleka Kid program. She began to wake at 4 a.m. and walk at 5 a.m. along the road nicknamed the AIDS Superhighway. For 2 hours from Vamilia into Maimahu, to volunteer her time as a helper at the school, working with special needs children, in the hopes she could learn the skills to better show her love to Phyllis. Every day up and walk and volunteer and walk home in the dark. When she would arrive home, she would clean Phyllis, talk and sing to her, and practice the new skills she had learned, volunteering her time to help others. It was at this chapter moment in her story where we met and met again, now in her tent. She told us how CTC would not pay her, not hire her as a teacher, but she was so appreciative that she could learn from them. How they encouraged her, though, not to come because she was so far away. How she had to leave Phyllis alone in the tent with no help all day in the hopes that she could show her love a little more 12 hours later at night. 2 days later, my mom and I left to come back to the U.S. Wow. Feelings, sadness, anger, love, empowerment, guilt, confusion, consciousness, remember me, tell my story, come back. Where to begin? Question. Experiencing so much love and hope and systemic poverty and vulnerability, so much need, and coming back to an America with real needs and so much wealth and isolation. Miriam and Phyllis continued to speak so loudly to my mother and me. Where to begin? Question mark. In the deepest rooted pain, in the most layered inequities, in the most intimate and personal of relationship. The soil of grassroots social change movements with a mother and her daughter. Where to begin? Question mark. With a mother and her daughter. Because in this beginning, we in fact weren't creating a beginning, but beginning to walk with Miriam in her survivance and social change walk that she had begun long before we had met her. I talked to CTC about employing and paying Miriam for the work she was already doing. They said no. I asked them again. They said no. What about if we paid invested in her salary for the earned work and impact she was making? They said yes. With an intense eye on Miriam and Phyllis's relationship, we formed mother and daughter circles here. Each family circle, 6 of them, committed to paying $5 a month for Miriam's salary. By January of 2010, Miriam's Circle had formed as a support circle of women and heart-centered men, investing in Miriam and Phyllis, and in equitable impact ways. Miriam and Phyllis began watering the lives and relationships of women here. Compassionate growth, where all people centered on equity, fairness, and justice, involved in the growth or the circle or the community, are challenged, empowered, and partner in meeting the needs of all by meeting the needs of the most vulnerable. 4 years later, as Miriam Circle International has expanded its reach to 30 families in relationship-based case management and many layered initiatives and programs, Miriam and Phyllis are and will continue to be at the heartbeat and core of any and all we do tonight. Miriam was the first to have a permanent home built in the Familia IDP community. Miriam and Phyllis now enjoy going on walks with Phyllis's wheelchair and using their accessible cement ramp to get in and out of their house. Through the MCI Music Therapy Grant and the help of Miriam Circle members, Miriam and Phyllis now use music to work on functional living skills, how to use music to hold onto her spoon. Phyllis is able to sit up and has expanded her nonverbal communication spectrum tenfold. She's able to express through noise and motion her needs and feelings. Miriam now has a savings account, a water tank, several chickens. She's become a leading advocate, a spokeswoman for the whole community, and has hosted several large Miriam Circle celebrations and fellowships. Several other community organizations and well-wishers have noticed Miriam's inner strength and have supported her and the community around her. Phyllis has built interpersonal relationships with the other Miriam Circle sisters and familia, and they spend time together, singing and resting in her bed, like you saw, during holidays from school. Miriam has learned and become a lead teacher at the school for special needs children. But, and why we're here tonight, Miriam wants to be back home. Miriam wants to be back with her daughter. Our next step in case management with Miriam is what she and we are calling the Phyllis Fund, empowering Miriam's choice. Still, 4 years later, down the line, with so much deep and wide growth, the school has not allowed Phyllis to be a member. And so Miriam, this time in a matatu, a crowded taxi, instead of walking, heads to work and back home with Phyllis, alone in her bed, not the dirt floor. More compassionate growth needs to happen. Miriam is now ready to be a RISE member, reinforcing innovative social entrepreneurs. She wants to purchase cows and enough goats to earn her living every day so that she can quit teaching and come back home and spend more time, the daytime and the nighttime, with her daughter. In this is our daily challenge. In this is this evening. As Miriam circle to continue growing in rooted ways towards a relationship-based growth, in valuable and vulnerable communities. As Miriam and Phyllis love and grow, we grow. And as we grow, they grow. That is why we call ourselves Miriam Circle.